My grandmother left me a rotting beach house with a broken porch and a leaking roof. My brother got the investment portfolio, the downtown condo, and the car. Everyone at the reading nodded like it made sense. My husband squeezed my hand, but not with comfort. He squeezed it the way you grab something you're about to throw away. On the drive home, he said it out loud. "She basically left you nothing." I didn't answer. I watched the highway pass and thought about my grandmother's hands, how they always smelled like salt and cedar, how she used to sit on that broken porch every single morning and look at the water like it owed her something. I thought there had to be a reason. I just didn't know it yet. My name is Claire. I'm 32 years old, and for the past 6 years, I have been the kind of wife my husband's family called sweet. That word always bothered me. Sweet. Like I was dessert. Something soft and forgettable after the real meal. I worked part-time as a bookkeeper while my husband Marcus built his consulting firm. I handled our daughter, our home, every school form, every grocery run, every birthday card to his mother. I did it without asking for credit because I thought that's what you did when you loved someone. The day of the will reading, I sat across from my brother in that law office and watched him smile at every number the attorney read. He had driven up in a new truck. He showed up alone. Our grandmother had been sick for 2 years, and in those 2 years, he had visited her exactly once that I knew of. I had visited her every other weekend. I sat with her through the hard nights. I learned which tea she liked, which pillow helped her back, which television programs made her laugh. I was there the morning she stopped recognizing faces. I held her hand anyway. And then she left him the portfolio and left me the beach house. I heard the sharp breath Marcus drew in beside me. I felt it before I saw it, the way his posture changed, the way he shifted slightly away from me like distance was already forming. That evening, his mother came over for dinner. She brought a bottle of wine, and that particular smile she wore when she felt she had been proven right about something. Marcus poured the glasses. His mother raised hers and said, without looking at me, that she always knew my grandmother was a practical woman, that she could see where the real future was. Marcus laughed. His mother laughed. I refilled the breadbasket and said nothing. After she left, I was cleaning up the kitchen when Marcus leaned against the doorframe with his arms crossed. He watched me for a moment. Then he said, "You know you can't do anything with that property, right? It's basically a liability. The roof alone would cost more than it's worth." I kept washing the dish in my hand. "My mother thinks you should just sign it over. Take whatever small amount someone would offer and be done with it." I set the dish down carefully. "I haven't even seen it yet. Claire." He said my name the way adults say it to children who are being difficult. "I've driven past that area. It's nothing. It's an old house on a stretch of beach that nobody cares about. Your grandmother held onto it out of sentiment. That's all it was." I dried my hands. "I need you to be realistic," he said. "We have actual financial goals. We can't be dragging around a property that costs money just to exist." That night, I lay in the dark and listened to him sleep and made a quiet decision. I would go see it myself. Alone. Before I let anyone talk me into anything. The following Saturday, I told Marcus I was visiting a friend for the weekend. I loaded my daughter into the car, packed a bag, and drove 3 hours south to a town called Pelican Cove. My daughter sat in the backseat asking questions about the ocean the whole way, and I answered every single one. The house was worse than I expected, and better than I feared. The porch was soft in 2 places. The front door swelled in the frame and required a shoulder to open. Inside smelled like damp wood and thyme, but the light coming through the back windows was extraordinary. Big and gold and wide open, the kind of light that doesn't exist in cities. My daughter walked straight to the back window and pressed her palms against the glass and said, "Mom, look at the water." I looked. We spent the first afternoon cleaning what we could. I wiped down surfaces, opened windows, let the salt air through. My daughter found a jar of sea glass on a shelf and carried it around like treasure. I found old blankets in a cedar chest, still clean, still folded with a precision that made my chest ache. My grandmother had folded them. Her hands had touched every crease. That night, I put my daughter to sleep in the cleanest bedroom and walked through the rest of the house slowly, running my fingers along the walls. I wasn't sure what I was looking for. Maybe nothing. Maybe just her. In the back corner of the house, off the kitchen. There was a small room that used to be a study. I had never really gone in there as a child. My grandmother always kept the door closed. I pushed it open now. A metal desk, a lamp, a filing cabinet in the corner, old and dark green, the kind with a lock on the top drawer. Above the cabinet, on a small hook, hung a single key on a piece of twine. The way it hung there, obvious and waiting, made my hands go still. My grandmother never left things by accident. I crossed the room and took the key off the hook. My daughter was sleeping. The house was quiet except for the water outside. I stood there for a moment, holding that small key, and felt the weight of everything I didn't know pressing against my ribs. What if there was nothing important inside? What if it was just old receipts and expired documents and sentiment? What if Marcus was right and this whole place was nothing? I put the key in the lock. It turned smoothly, like it had been turned recently. The top drawer was full of folders. Thick ones, organized with tabs. The kind of organizational system that only someone meticulous would build. I pulled the first one out. Property records. Survey documents. Parcel maps with the beach house outlined in red. I set it aside. The second folder was thinner. Inside were letters, a stack of them, rubber banded together. The top one had a return address I didn't recognize. A company name I had never heard. The date on the postmark was 14 months ago. My grandmother had been sick then, barely leaving her room, still receiving letters about this property. I took the stack to the desk, turned on the lamp, and started reading. The letters were from a development company, a coastal resort group that had been acquiring land along that stretch of shoreline for years. The letters were formal and polite and persistent. They were inquiring about the possibility of purchasing or entering a long-term ground lease arrangement for the beach house property and the land behind it. I opened another folder. Inside were maps, professional surveying maps, with notes in the margins in my grandmother's handwriting. She had annotated everything. She had circled a section of the land behind the house and written one word next to it, wait. At the bottom of the drawer, beneath everything else, was a sealed envelope with my name on it. My full name, written in her handwriting. Claire Margaret Aldrin. My hands were shaking when I opened it. She had written the letter on plain white paper, in ink, in the careful looping script she used when something mattered. Claire, if you are reading this, then you found the key where I left it. I knew you would be the one to look. I stopped reading. I pressed my hand flat against the paper and breathed for a moment. I want to tell you something about this land. 15 years ago, the county approved a coastal development corridor that runs directly behind this property. The resort companies have known about it for a long time. They have been trying to buy this stretch of beach for over a decade. I have said no to every offer. Not because I am sentimental, though I am, but because I know what is coming. The corridor approval is only the first step. The full commercial rezoning for this section is scheduled for review in the next 18 months. When that passes, this land becomes one of the most valuable access points on the entire southern coastline. Resort access, private beach rights, direct highway frontage. The last offer I received was significant. The one after that will be more. I did not leave this to your brother because he would have sold it the following week. He has never understood the value of waiting. I left it to you because you have always understood that some things are worth sitting with. You are patient in the way that matters. You read before you act. You stayed with me when it was hard, and you never asked for anything in return. That is exactly the kind of person who deserves to hold on to something long enough to see what it becomes. Do not sell it quickly. Do not let anyone rush you. The development company's most recent contact information is in the folder marked with a blue tab. They have been waiting. Let them wait a little longer. I love you. I always have. More than the sea glass, and more than the cedar chest, and more than anything in that portfolio your brother was so pleased about. I set the letter down on the desk and looked out the small study window at the dark shape of the water beyond the dunes. The resort lights down the coast threw a pale gold wash across the horizon. She knew. She planned every single part of it. She turned down money, real money, again and again, and kept this land specifically for this moment, specifically for me. I sat in that chair for a long time. I did not cry right away. I just sat and listened to the water and felt something inside me become very, very still. In the morning, After my daughter ate cereal and went to collect more sea glass from the shore, I pulled out my phone and called the number from the folder marked with a blue tab. A woman answered on the second ring. Coastal Meridian Group, she said. I asked for the acquisitions department. A man came on the line. His name was Patrick. I told him I was the new owner of the Pelican Cove property. There was a pause. We have been trying to reach the previous owner for some time, he said. She passed away last month, I said. I inherited the property. Another pause. Longer this time. Miss Aldrin, we are very much still interested in that parcel. Very much. Would you be open to a preliminary conversation? I told him I would need 2 weeks before any meetings. He said, of course. He gave me his direct line and said to call anytime. I ended the call and stood at the back window watching my daughter walk along the waterline with her shoes in one hand and her jar of sea glass in the other. The morning light on the water was blinding and clean. I put my phone in my pocket and made a decision. I would not tell Marcus. Not yet. Not until I understood exactly what I had and what it was worth and what my options were. Because the one thing every comment, every whisper, every dismissive word at that dinner table had gotten wrong was this. They had assumed my silence was weakness. They had mistaken my patience for passivity. They had called me sweet and meant small. I was done being small. The following 2 weeks, I did my research quietly. I called a real estate attorney whose name I found through a colleague. I asked about inheritance and marital property laws in our state. She was direct and clear. Inherited property, she told me, received before or during a marriage, remains the sole property of the inheriting spouse as long as it is not commingled with marital assets. My husband had no legal claim to my grandmother's beach house. I asked her to keep our conversation confidential for now. I called the county planning office and gave them the parcel address. The woman who answered put me on hold for a moment, then came back. Yes, she said. The coastal commercial rezoning application for that corridor had been submitted. Public comment period closes next month. The vote was scheduled for 6 weeks out. Based on the current council composition and the number of supporting applications, passage was expected. I thanked her and hung up and sat in my car in the parking lot of my daughter's school and let the information settle over me like water. 6 weeks. At home that evening, Marcus was in a good mood. His firm had closed a deal. He talked about it through dinner and I listened and nodded and asked the right questions. My daughter told him about the sea glass she had collected. He said that was great, honey, and looked back at his phone. Later that week, his mother called me directly. She was warm and careful the way she always was when she wanted something. She said she had been thinking about the beach house situation. She said she had a contact, a developer friend, who might take the property off my hands for a reasonable number. She said reasonable in a tone that meant low. She said it would be good for everyone to just resolve it and move on. I told her I appreciated her thinking of me. I did not call her contact. Instead, the following Friday, I drove back to Pelican Cove alone and met Patrick from Coastal Meridian Group at the property. He came with 2 colleagues. They were not dismissive. They were not loud or flashy. They walked the land behind the house with quiet focus, measuring sight lines, checking the survey marks, discussing access points in low voices. They looked at the property the way people look at something they have wanted for a long time and are finally close to having. We sat on the back porch afterward, the one with the soft boards, and Patrick laid a folder on the table between us. Miss Aldrin, he said, once the rezoning passes, this parcel becomes a critical access point for our southern expansion. Beach frontage, direct road access, the setback allowances. There is genuinely no replacement for this specific location. He slid the folder across to me. I opened it. The number on the first page was more than Marcus earned in 4 years, and that was the opening offer. I closed the folder. I'll need time to review this with my attorney. Patrick nodded. He expected that. He said they were prepared to move when I was ready. He also said one more thing as he was leaving. He said my grandmother had negotiated with them twice over the years. Both times she had declined, but both times she had been informed, precise, and completely unbothered by their interest. He said in his experience that kind of calm was rare. Beer. She knew exactly what she had, he said. Yes, I said. She did. After they left, I sat on that porch for a long time. The boards were soft under me. The water was moving the way it always does, indifferent and enormous and beautiful. My grandmother had sat in this exact spot every morning and looked at that water and waited. Not because she had no choice. Because she understood that timing was everything. I pulled my phone out and sent a text to Marcus. Dinner Sunday. My brother's family too. Nice place. My treat. He replied with a question mark. I said, just family time. I'll make the reservation. The next 3 weeks, I moved carefully. I met with my attorney twice. I understood the offer, the structure, the options. I could sell outright or enter a long-term ground lease and retain ownership while receiving annual payments for decades. My attorney walked me through both. The lease option was more complex, but the long-term numbers were extraordinary. I also filed a quiet document with my attorney's guidance, formally noting the inherited property as separate from marital assets. A precaution. A smart one. I did not tell Marcus any of this. He continued to mention the property occasionally at dinner, in the context of what a nuisance it was and how we really needed to deal with it. I said I was looking into it. He nodded and changed the subject. On the Sunday of the dinner, I arrived at the restaurant first. It was the same kind of place Marcus liked, dim and expensive with leather booths and a wine list he could gesture toward meaningfully. I wore a dress I had not worn in a while. My daughter was with a sitter. I sat down, ordered water, and waited. My brother arrived with his wife. He was in a good mood, telling a story before he even sat down. Marcus arrived 5 minutes later, kissed my cheek, looked at the menu. His mother was not there. This dinner was not for her. We ordered. My brother talked about a trip he was planning, somewhere warm, funded loosely by his new portfolio income. Marcus talked about his firm. I listened and ate and waited for the moment. It came naturally, the way good timing always does. My brother made a comment, something sideways and half-joking, about whether I had found any gold buried in the beach house yet. His wife laughed. Marcus smiled into his wine. I set my fork down. I reached into my bag and placed a folder on the table. My brother looked at it. What's that? An offer, I said. For grandmother's property. Marcus looked up. From who? Your mother-in-law's contact? No, I said. I slid the folder toward the center of the table. My brother opened it first, because he always moves faster than he thinks. I watched his face go through several expressions in the span of about 4 seconds. Confusion, then attention, then the particular stillness that comes when a number doesn't fit inside your existing understanding of a situation. His wife leaned over to look. Marcus took the folder from my brother's hand. He read the page. He read it again. He set it on the table very slowly. This is real? He said. It is, I said. And that's just the opening offer. The table was quiet. My brother looked at his plate. His wife looked at me with something that might have been admiration or might have been recalibration. I couldn't tell. Marcus said, quietly, You knew about this. I thought about what to say. I thought about my grandmother's letter. Her handwriting, the word wait circled on the survey map, the key on the hook that she left in plain sight for the right person to find. My grandmother knew, I said. She planned it for years. She left it to me because she trusted me to wait. Marcus put his hand on the folder. Claire, we need to talk about this. This is a family decision. This isn't something you just lie. It's my property, I said. Not loudly, not angrily. Just clearly, the way you state something true. It came from my grandmother. It's in my name. My attorney has already reviewed everything. He stared at me. I wanted you to know, I said. I thought you deserved to know. But the decision is already made. My brother looked up. What decision? I'm signing the lease agreement next week, I said. I'm keeping ownership of the land. The resort will develop the commercial portion with my retained rights. The income will fund my daughter's future. I picked up my glass of water. I also filed for divorce this morning. The waiter appeared at exactly that moment to ask if anyone wanted dessert. My brother said no. His wife said no. Marcus said nothing. The waiter nodded and left. I finished my water. I've been called sweet for a very long time, I said, and I surprised myself, because I almost laughed, saying it. I think you all believed it. I understand why. I was quiet. I didn't argue. I drove 3 hours to sit with a sick old woman when nobody else did. I looked at Marcus. You called what she left me worthless. You said it was a liability. You told me to be realistic. He opened his mouth. She left me the most valuable parcel on the southern coastal corridor, I said. She left it to me specifically because I was the only one patient enough to see it for what it was. Silence settled over the table like a cloth being laid. My brother said my name once. I looked at him. He looked away. Marcus stared at the folder. He didn't look at me with contempt the way he had at the will reading. He didn't look at me with the pity he had assembled over years. He looked at me with something I had never seen from him before, something close to genuine seeing, like a person noticing a room they had walked through 1,000 times and realizing for the first time that it was bigger than they thought. I didn't need it anymore. I put enough on the table to cover the check, picked up my folder, and said goodnight. The drive home was quiet. I opened the windows and let the night air through. I thought about my daughter asleep at the sitter's, probably curled around a stuffed animal with her shoes still on, the way she always fell asleep when she was somewhere new. I thought about the sea glass jar on the windowsill of the beach house, catching whatever light came in. I thought about a broken porch that would eventually be rebuilt and land that the water had shaped for 100 years before any of us arrived to argue about it. My grandmother had spent 15 years saying no to people with money and confidence and impatience. 15 years of sitting on a soft-boarded porch looking at water that didn't owe her anything. Not because she was waiting for me specifically. She couldn't have planned that far. But she had written that letter, knowing that whoever found the key would be someone capable of sitting still long enough to understand what stillness was worth. I signed the lease agreement 9 days later. My attorney was there. The representative from Coastal Meridian was there. 2 witnesses. No one from Marcus's family. No one from my brother's new life. Just me and a pen and a document that said this land, this specific piece of earth my grandmother had held onto through illness and pressure and every polite predatory letter, belonged to me and would belong to my daughter after me. The morning after I signed, I drove back down to Pelican Cove one more time. It was early. The parking lot of the old house was empty, the sign weathered to almost nothing. I walked around the back to where the land opened up behind the last dune line, just open ground running toward the coastal road, unremarkable to anyone who didn't know what was coming. 4 months later, construction equipment arrived. I watched it from the porch I had paid to have repaired, the boards solid now under my feet. My daughter sat beside me with her sea glass jar in her lap and asked how tall the buildings would be. I told her I wasn't sure yet. Pretty tall, I thought. She thought about that. Then she asked if we could keep the porch. I told her we could keep anything we wanted. She leaned against me, and we watched the equipment move in the distance, slow and methodical, rearranging the earth along a blue line on a survey map that a patient woman had circled in pencil and marked with a single word. Wait. I had waited. My grandmother had been right about me. And the most surprising thing, the thing I still think about when I drive past the construction site and see the steel frames going up and the road widening, is that she had known all along. She had looked at me the way I look at the water, like something worth sitting with, like something that would be worth it in the end. She hadn't given me the smallest piece of what she had. She had given me the one she trusted most.